Welcome back to PPCM's Painful Truth. Today's guest, Melinda Schaaf.
Hi,
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking and for your time on, talking with me today about peripartum cardiomyopathy, PPCM, and how this experience came to, into your life. And why don't you introduce yourself, where you're from, what state, and what age were you when you were first diagnosed PPCM?
So my name is Melinda. I'm from Northern Ontario. I'm sorry if you hear my kids playing in the background. They're
That's
playing
okay.
Fortnite downstairs.
I got a puppy here today. My son's in school, but
Okay.
this is fine.
Yeah. So I'm from Canada, Ontario, and I was diagnosed 8 years ago when I had my second child. And it's been a long road.
So here you're in Canada, correct?
Yes.
And I'm in America, so we definitely have obviously completely different healthcare systems and insurance. When you were diagnosed with peripartum cardiomyopathy, were you already at a life threat, or were you diagnosed during pregnancy?
At that time, I was diagnosed 3 days postpartum.
Oh,
So
okay.
So I did start out with preeclampsia at 33 weeks gestation. And then about 3 days later, that's when they diagnosed the heart failure.
Interesting. You're the first Canadian that was diagnosed after giving birth and delivery. What were this was obviously this was your first pregnancy?
This was actually my second pregnancy. So my first pregnancy was about 5 years prior to that.
Okay. And did you have similar symptoms during the first pregnancy? Maybe you had it and just wasn't diagnosed, or what was different between your first pregnancy and your second pregnancy?
So my first pregnancy, that first pregnancy was pretty good for the most part. Near the end of my pregnancy, I did get a lot of swelling, and they were concerned at that time of the preeclampsia, but my blood work and my blood pressure was okay. But I did have a lot of excessive swelling. I did have a lot of postpartum issues. Like I did have a lot of chest pain and stuff like that. But I also had some other underlying gastric issues that they kind of just blamed it on that. So I can't really say 100% for sure whether I actually had any type of symptoms during that pregnancy or not.
And what was the test that your healthcare, were you at a hospital, or were you diagnosed from your gynecologist or cardiologist?
For the peripartum cardiomyopathy, I was diagnosed, I was in a hospital setting. I was having some pretty severe symptoms.
At what hospital?
I was at the that's not right. It was the Ottawa General Hospital.
So was this through your gynecologist, or?
No, actually, it was just the general OB gynecology that was on care on the maternal ward. So my daughter was in the NICU because she was born at 36 weeks. So she was in the NICU, and I was just in the postpartum care unit. And that's when I kept complaining of the symptoms. And then eventually they ordered, the CT and the echo once, that they
Who are
kind
they?
of exhaust. So it would have been
gynecology?
the gynecology and the OB team.
Got it.
And
Okay.
then eventually I was put over to cardiology care.
Okay. So wonderful. So in where you are in Canada, your gynecology OB brought it to the attention of a cardiologist. You weren't just sent to a cardiologist from the
Correct.
hospital. Got it.
Correct.
That's a
So,
lot. That's our American dream, by the way. I mean, we women, this is global. This is just one of the most sad, disturbing, emotionally, mentally, physically can strip you like disease, and it's all preventable. So here in America, I have been interviewing so many women, and they all say that they are diagnosed when their life is at a threat, and that they are until like a cardiologist diagnoses them. And so, if you can please, if you don't have this information now, it's fine. Maybe we can have a future interview, because I'm really like, we're just trying to put the pieces together of this disease. It is a very big puzzle, and women have been giving birth since the beginning of time. And maternal mortality is extremely common. It's just rare for diagnosis. And for United States of America, we don't have the diagnosis in gynecology, but we do rely on the BNP test for cardiology. So I'm curious, what was your test that your OB and gynecology provided you that they were able to diagnose you, to give the diagnosis to the cardiologist? Do you know that? What was the test that?
Yeah. So initially they done, your blood work or your basic blood work check. They did, they checked my blood pressure. They did an ECG. They did an X-ray. What actually found for me was having my CT of my chest done, and that's where they actually found the enlarged heart, and then went forward on and automatically ordered the echocardiogram, which then showed the cardiomyopathy. And then at that point, then I was referred to the cardiologist.
Okay, so very smart. So they knew to give you the proper screening and testing, and then your cardiologist did the follow-up blood testings. And
so with the cardiologist, when I first initially seen them in hospital, they're the ones that gave me the diagnosis. They're the ones that put me on the cardiac medications that I needed to abide by. And then I did my follow-ups out of hospital at the cardiologist clinic, going forward with blood work and continued echocardiograms. And I even eventually did do a cardiac MRI as well.
Mm-hmm. And with this disease and with medical, I know the cost of it, being diagnosed with this disease. What is it has costed you medically, financially? What is your copay? What do you pay? What is your what's your state on that?
So up here in Canada, we are very fortunate to have the universal care health system. So ultimately, for me to be in the hospital setting, to see a cardiologist, a gynecology, we don't pay anything out of pocket to be cared for. The only thing that we do actually pay out of pocket would be our prescription medications. And a lot of people can get good health benefits through their employers or through provincial health systems that are in place for lower income.
Again, I am loving to hearing this. This is like music to my ears because, again, this is our American dream.
Right.
So the average woman that is diagnosed with this is charged over $288,000 just out of delivery and labor. Insurance does not cover it. It depended on the hospital if they want to give grace with a financial hardship. That's what we rely on. We pay approximately from $500 to $2,000 a month on insurance, and EKG is $2,000. So we have to pay it because just even one screening is like basically not including the medication and hospital bills as well as everything else. So it continues. I've talked to so many PPCM survivors in America where their child is 8 years old or 10 years old, and they have either just got out of like labor and delivery disease labeled or is diagnosed diseased. Once you're diagnosed with that, everything goes up. DNV, insurance, like everything. It literally puts a woman in the United States of America like at such an low advantage and a challenge to even like be like try to function normal because you can't feed your child because you need to live, and it's really, really sad. Like my American dream for women with maternal mortality death rate is to basically rise above and to make the standard diagnosis in gynecology, just like your gynecologists did. They knew to check the heart. They knew to take the proper care and health care that a woman deserves and needs while, literally feeling like not just feeling like she's dying, but literally is dying, and paying all this money, for Americans. We are still not diagnosed during pregnancy because there is none during OBG or any type of education or training or in a pamphlet or like in a waiting room, by the bathroom when a woman's giving her. There's no information whatsoever about the screening labs and testings that should be already mandatory globally. But we're even paying for the healthcare and we don't have the diagnosis. It's not FDA approved. So you have the SFLT1, which is the subtoxic fluid diagnosis, and with the PIGF, which is the placenta growth factor combination kit and instrument to diagnose you in Canada. I do know that because I talked to the reps and they said it's located in Canada, but we hope that it's approved. And then like you call and it's like another year later, and now we're 5 years later and they're saying maybe in a year and a half. That was like September 2021. So I mean, like at this point, we know now we have to rely on cardiology as Americans, and we will pay up the wazoo unless things are going to be changed. So, I mean, with this disease, it's so terrible. And what you have experienced with this is like the scariest position for a woman to be in, especially just giving birth. How did that affect you when you just here are diagnosed with holding a baby? Like, did you have questions about breastfeeding? Like, where did it go from there once you were diagnosed? Oh, you're unmuted. You have to unmute.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, so when I was diagnosed, it was terrifying because I honestly had never heard of it either. At that time in my life, there wasn't a blood test or anything that was part of our prenatal care. But the main thing that I was concerned about was I going to be able to recover? And was I able to continue to breastfeed? Because that was something that I was extremely passionate about. And I was very fortunate that I was able to find appropriate medications that allowed me to continue my breastfeeding journey, as well as allowing me to reach my potential in my recovery. So.
And what was your EF percent when you were diagnosed peripartum cardiomyopathy? Did they say?
So, yeah, they said it was between 25% and 30%.
And what is it today?
53%.
Amazing.
I
So,
know.
yeah, that's
Thank you.
basically recovered. And as we know, just keep raising that percentage. We do a little bit every day. If it's even a good stretch, or getting the heart rate up, or by doing a little exercise or stretching. I always say stretching the heart muscle. I'm a believer in stretching, that our hearts are one big muscle. And when you stretch, and you gently, at first,
Yeah.
because you can't pull a muscle, you can't pull your heart muscle. But just to get that area where the blood is pumping, and that will raise our EFs. I went from a 10% to a 67%. So I worked really hard on that. I got in the water, started, just lightly, walking back and forth with weights in the pool, and then just moving, because it was less impact on my back, and I had the kidney failure and all of that. And so I was afraid, even though, at one point, I would dive in the ocean and, be on my surfboard for like 8 hours a day. I could not do that first, when you suffocate in your own fluid, but I wanted to get to the fear. I wanted to beat the fear of feeling like I was drowning, because I love the water. But that really, really, really helped my EF percent. I was able to do aerobics, water aerobics, with the 70-year-olds, and I could not believe how fit I was getting, just from doing, these water aerobics, and I had a defibrillator in, and, I had the 3 cardiac arrests, and I, didn't let any of the fear of what the doctors were telling me about, whatever it is that they were telling me. It was like, for me, I just kept, focused on my trying to focus on the mental health aspect of it, not focusing on, okay, this hurts, this is not normal, this feels weird. I won't go, and still to today, I will not go into a panic. I will express how I feel, knowing that, 1, it's not my time, and 2, I'm alive, and I'm basically, I got zombie issues. So it's almost like, every day's a blessing, but we're not going to be what we were ever, no matter how healthy we were.
Exactly.
And that takes a lot of adjustment, not just physically, but most definitely, mental health with this is a huge, huge, lack of care, advocacy, and, the women here, I don't know what it's like in Canada, but please share about your mental health advocacy when a woman goes through maternal mortality with a baby, and then they're like, okay, you had heart failure, now go off and have a normal life. And they don't do any follow-ups, and they don't care. And the mental health is very difficult. I mean, and I got my master's in mental health and in social work. I have I have 2 dual undergrads and two dual master's degree, one where I attended at the University of Pennsylvania in the School of Social Work, where policy and practice, right next to the School of Wharton in Pennsylvania, one of the top 5 schools in the nation with the best education. And I still never have, and I worked with pregnancy women. My internship was basically, you had to address a concern and solve the problem. Well, ironically, that day I was driving home off of the Ben Franklin Bridge in Philadelphia I took the Walt Whitman Bridge that day, and I passed through Camden, and there was a woman giving birth on the streets. And I usually, at the time, I had like I had like my little zip car, and I loved my punch. I had like 250 watts, and I was like that girl that had the boom, boom, at the time. And it was, my radio wasn't even on that day, and I heard a woman giving birth on the street at a stoplight in Camden. It's in between Philadelphia and Haddingfield. And I let her in my car, and she had me go to this little place, but she said that a lot of women that are on the streets get raped, and then they have babies on the streets. And then when she took me to this place, it was like St. John's in Camden. There was like the beds were, it was awful. It was, I couldn't even believe it. So in Haddingfield, which is right down the street, they have a beautiful Osborne Family Health Care Center for women to go for their pregnancy appointments. And then right across the street, they have Our Lady of Lourdes, which is the hospital where they can give birth. And then right down the street is, it was Camden Catholic High School, and I'm Jewish, but I talked to the father, and I said, there's a concern here. I want to use a bill that passed through Congress for women to get sliding scale fees and to be cared for at the family hospital. They welcomed it. And then when they welcomed it, I got the seniors to do the volunteer work, and then they would recruit the 11th graders to when they became seniors. So it's an ongoing long-term program. I succeeded this at the University of Pennsylvania, where I solved the problem, addressed the concern. But this was like 20 years ago, literally. And I was very involved at the Family Osborne Center and with pregnancy specifically. And then 20 years later, I have my times of death called from a preventable maternal mortality. I should have known this just in my background, and the fact that I am so big on education that I've been always an advocate for pregnancy. It's almost like I was meant to experience this, to have this voice, and to not just share it with women in America that we do struggle and have these extra challenges, like where we don't have the specific diagnosis kits and instruments that Canada does. And we don't have the healthcare system on our side. We're financially, we are in major debt, and the insurance is ridiculous, and entrapment with Invest. These women, these life vests are $5,000 for 3 months, and you can't own it. You have to rent it. And for every 3 months, it's $5,000. It's like, okay, pay this or give back the vest and die, because you can't have the defibrillator because you're allergic to it. I mean, it's awful. And, the fact that we're talking about this and you're in Canada and I'm here, there is no degree of pain that this disease causes. And any little bit of help of just having any type of women being respected, with this disease, I hope that, globally, as women come together and talk about this disease, that it's that there's some real change within this awareness.
I agree. It should be a global standard, and it should be a part of our prenatal care. We should be getting the blood work done throughout that pregnancy to monitor, because it's just like preeclampsia, any
EKG. That's what discovered it.
Exactly.
At least give the gynecology something to give the diagnosis to the cardiology. And that's a beautiful thing that your doctors did that. I mean, they were your heroes. And that's what we like 100%. To hear. Our medical community, we want to say they are our, you know, what they are our heroes. Medical community is, they are, you know, beautiful inside and out people, but there's a lack with specifically with maternal pregnancy induced complication awareness and the preventions that we have right on our fingertips. It's not like it doesn't exist. So no, thank you today for your time and everything. What would you like to, as we end this, what would you like to tell a woman or a family that is watching this and learning from us, two worlds coming together as women with this disease?
The number one thing is to be your biggest advocate. If something doesn't feel right, you need to be able to stand up for yourself and say, listen, no, this isn't right. This is happening to me. I know my body and I need help. And I had to do that too. There was a few days where, you know, they kind of kept pushing it off and you know, and that happens everywhere, no matter what type of healthcare system you have. But the most important thing is be your biggest advocate. Don't give up. Don't let somebody push you away and say it's something that it might not be.
Yes. And this is actually unanimous across the board all over globally. When I ask this question, that's exactly what every single woman says. So there is a real strong voice of women that are speaking the same language that have never met each other. And we're saying the exact same thing. This does need to change globally. Absolutely. It does. It all needs to be standard. I mean, the more that we can provide these, you know, this training and education information, the better change that we can maybe, you know, create for at least for our children and our children's children. Exactly. You know, starting now in 2022. So thank you so very much for your time. And, you know, you're such a lovely, beautiful person to give me your time. And
thank you.
You know, we fight the same fight, and you know, we just hope and dream that, you know, this movement will you know, be supported.
I have faith that it will be. It really will be. If we keep talking and we keep sharing, it's going to happen one day.
Yes,
and I'm glad to be a part of that.
Well, thank you, because I can't do it alone, but I'm building the platform, so might as well, you know, show our documentation. They have medical documentation. Well, this is our documentation. This is the best that we can do. So thank you again. And, you know, again, I look forward to, you know, years of friendship, and hopefully we could be talking about this when we're 80, hopefully. You know,
I hope so too.
Our hearts keep on ticking.
Yeah, exactly.
Have a lovely day. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us and listening to the PPCM Fund podcast. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe. PPCM's Painful Truth is made possible through the generous support of donors like you. Help us spread the awareness by donating at ppcmfund.com or click the link below to become a member through Ko-fi. Have a great day.